Welcome to Caregiving Club On Air. This podcast is dedicated to the millions of family caregivers who want wellness tips and self-care solutions, who seek expert advice, and who want news about healthy aging and how to create well home design in our forever homes. I'm Sherri Snelling, a corporate gerontologist, author, and educator, a TV interviewer, host, and news commentator. I'm joining you from Southern California, where our interviews and news take us all across the country to explore the many ways to help you on your caregiving journey and to lift you up here at Caregiving Club On Air. Welcome to Caregiving Club On Air. I'm your host, Sherri Snelling, and for this August episode, we are going to focus on National Wellness Month. But as you know from my book, Me Time Monday, wellness is about 7 different elements of life, including social wellness. And that brings us to our great guests for this episode, which are Savenia Falquist and Christine Gordon of HomeShare. And they're kind of what I would call Golden Girls 2.0. They're going to explain what that means and tell us how HomeShare is not only helping older adults with social wellness, but also emotional and financial wellness as well. And then as we go into caregiver wellness news, we have a big news flash. Taylor Swift is a caregiver. That's right. She has joined the ranks of the 63 million Americans who are family caregivers. We're going to tell you all about that. We're also going to talk a little bit about the 5 stages of grief, actually 6 stages of grief, according to David Kessler in his wonderful book, Finding Meaning. But we're going to talk about broken heart syndrome and what is it and what are some of the things that you can do to address it and overcome it and understand grief just in general. We're also going to talk about the 7 different relaxation hacks that you can do from my book. Also, we created a video around those 7 hacks, but it was all for National Relaxation Day on August 15th. And then as we shift gears into well home design news, we're going to tell you what is the connection between Parkinson's, golf courses, and dogs. And speaking of dogs, we're going to also talk about how do we keep our dogs living longer? We know our dogs help us live longer. How do we keep them living longer? And also, how do they impact our health? And that's for National Dog Day on August 26th. And then we're also going to talk about the healthful impact and positive impact of coastal living. And that's for National Beach Day on August 30th. So with all of that, let's dive into our caregiver wellness news. So the caregiver wellness news, as I mentioned, August is National Wellness Month, which is why it is the month that I launched my book 2 years ago. I can't believe the book is 2 years old, Me Time Monday. But what's really important, I think, to understand about wellness, and there's so much more information in my book, it's really about personalizing how you feel, how you live your life. Do you have balance in your life? Because it's not enough to be physically fit. Maybe you're, physically active, you move a lot, you eat nutritiously, but if you're devoid of your spiritual wellness or social wellness or, emotional wellness, it's all going to impact everything else. So it's really about the balance of those 7 elements of life. And it's also not prescriptive. It's instructive. I think that's the biggest thing that I learned about wellness is, everybody can write a book or do a video on TikTok and tell you, do this, it helped me, which is great. But what helps you? We really have to, again, personalize it. And we also have to learn from all of the information that's out there what works best for us. While some things work for other people, they may not work for us. And I think, we need to be cautious of necessarily following all of these, prescriptions and do this cleanse and, do this or whatever. You have to take it all in stride. And also, for caregivers, which is who I write my books for, we really have to be mindful of we don't have a lot of time. We can't go to the gym for 40 minutes. We can't work out or, go to the spa for 2 hours or whatever it is. We've got what I say 7 minutes. 7 minutes. What can I do in 7 minutes? And that is reasonable and doable even for really crazed, overwhelmed caregivers to find those self-care moments. So anyway, the book certainly helps you and explains a lot more, but I thought it was a great way to kick off National Wellness Month. And then, as I mentioned up front, we have a new caregiver in our ranks, Taylor Swift, which is, both exciting and also really, I think, humanizes her in a lot of ways. She's kind of superhuman. She's certainly one of the world's greatest influencers, which is why I'm excited because when we have people like Taylor who become family caregivers, all of a sudden the spotlight gets a lot bigger. People pay a lot more attention. They start thinking, "Wow, if it can happen to Taylor, it can happen to me," or she's one of us. As I mentioned, 63 million Americans now are family caregivers. That's the latest research that just came out from the National Lens for Caregiving and AARP. And she was spent the summer caring for her dad. He went through heart bypass surgery, and certainly she was a caregiver tag team because she had her brother and her mother as well. But I think it just really helps us see that caregiving touches all of us, no matter how much money we make, how famous we are, where we live. It crosses all of those barriers. And so it was really nice to see Taylor talk about her caregiving experience. And I hope that she becomes an advocate for caregivers because we really need voices like hers. She's got a big one. So that was exciting, and I wrote a blog about it. I'll have a link on our episode guide page. And I also mentioned that in August we also have an awareness day for grief, and grief is something that for many people we think about grief being associated with death, but honestly, grief can come in many forms, and it can come with diagnosis. It can come with divorce. It can come with any kind of disruption in our lives, like maybe losing a job, losing a friendship. We go through those 5 stages of grief, which I outline in my book and I talk a lot about. I do a lot of educational webinars around this, but the 5 stages being denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Now, David Kessler, who worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was the founder and the creator of those 5 stages of grief, he wrote a book recently called Finding Meaning, the 6th stage of grief, which is kind of getting past acceptance into now getting back into a purposeful life where we feel like we have more meaning in our life. Great book, by the way, if you're going through all of this. But I wanted to raise something that comes with grief, and that's broken heart syndrome. Now, we talk a lot about heart health, and particularly heart health for women. We know that heart attack symptoms are different for women than for men. And what broken heart syndrome is, it typically does tend to affect more women than men. It's very emotionally based. It is typically when we've gone through something really traumatic, like a loss of a loved one, but something really severely traumatic that has really just upset and turned upside down our emotional wellness. And what happens is it can mimic the signs or the feelings of a heart attack, such as chest pain, or just feeling like your heart is racing, and you almost have like kind of an AFib or an arrhythmia in your heart. The good news, though, is that it can be addressed with medication and also with some cognitive behavioral therapy, which is talk therapy, where you actually talk with a counselor, maybe even talk with a faith-based person that you trust or a great friend that you trust or something. But really the social element of this is really important, and that's why I wanted to bring it up because we're focusing a lot on social wellness this month. But it is actually where the it affects the way the heart is pumping the blood. I'm just reading here. The rest of the heart continues to work as usual, but the heart contracts more forcefully. So you're just really feeling that emotional pain, and it's creating kind of this impact on the heart. Once we get past that emotional pain, the heart then goes back to normal. And as I said, sometimes you can help that with medication, but very often it can be helped without medication. And that's mostly through connecting with people, sharing that grief, sharing that emotion, being able to offload it a little bit so that every day it gets a little lighter, it gets a little bit more intense, less intense, and you can feel yourself starting to heal. So I thought it was really interesting because I came across an article, and actually, personally in my life, I was talking with somebody about broken heart syndrome. And so when I saw this article, I thought, oh, this would be a great thing to talk about because it is so associated with grief. So, Grief Awareness Day is on August 30th. And then, as I mentioned, my book turns 2 years old. on August 23rd. Can't believe it was 2 years ago. My gosh, such a labor of love. But I'm very excited. And by the way, the book is just continuing to give and give and give to me. I'm out speaking all the time. In fact, I'm traveling a lot this fall. Got several speaking gigs lined up, all based on the book, which is really exciting. I love being able to go out. As you guys know, I love to talk, but I love being able to go out and talk to groups of people, share some of the insights from the book, hear the feedback from the audience, and kind of feel that energy in the room about how do we find that balance back in life, because so many of us feel just like, some days it's like, really? So anyway, very exciting. And I want to just do a big shout out to all of you who've been such great supporters, to the organizations that continue to have me come speak, and for those who have purchased my book on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Bookshop or whatever. So thank you very much to everybody out there. And by the way, I have created a series of videos. They're on our YouTube channel, Caregiving Club on YouTube, and they're called 7 minutes of self-care solutions in 7 minutes. It's all from my book. So I took all the topics from my book and I created these really, short videos. They're less than 7 minutes long. But you can, if you feel like you want something more visual, or you want to hear me talking about the book, then you can go and check out those videos. And I dig into the details of some of the solutions and tips and things that you can do in 7 minutes that help you bring that balance back, that self-care, me time back into your life, particularly for those busy caregivers out there. And then I mentioned, so Relaxation Day, we just did self-care solution in 7 minutes. We just did 7 relaxation tips. I'm just going to read them to you here. Color breathing, visualization and daydreaming, sound bathing, and music. You've heard me talk about sound bathing, and there's been several articles now. One was in Wall Street Journal, but lots of people talking about sound bathing now. Progressive muscle relaxation, which is also something that the military uses to relax. It's called the military relaxation. So it's very similar to PMR. And then soapy hands. It's that silent walking and observing nature. So check out the video. As I said, it's also in my book, but I bring it all together in one place in the video, and you can kind of check those out and see which one works for you. Or share some other relaxation tips that we can also share with others. And we'll have links to those videos on the episode guide page. And then, National Friendship Day is on August 3rd. And there was a new study that came out that I thought was really interesting. It's from the University of Michigan National Poll on Healthy Aging, which is a really great resource for a lot of us in gerontology and other people who do research and take a look at statistics and populations and all that. And so they did a study on aging and friendships. And here's what they found: 90% of people over 50 say they have at least one close friend, which is actually great, because the Harvard Adult Development Study, which is the longest longitudinal study, it's been done now for over 85 years consistently, and it shows that the one secret sauce in living longer is having at least one confidant who has your back. So having that one close friend, 90% of people, you're on the road to longevity. But 10% say they don't have any close friends, which is really sad to me, to not have any friends. But there are people out there that are very, very lonely and isolated. And of course, with that then comes poorer health. And that's statistically now been connected. The less close quality friendships you have, the less good and positive your health status will be. And that includes physical as well as emotional health status. In this study, 75% report they have enough close friends. Probably be me. I feel like I have enough close friends. I'm not one of those people that has to be friends with everybody. In fact, I'm kind of one of those people. I like my little circle. And Laura Carstensen, great researcher at Stanford, found that the older we get, we start to prune those relationships. We're kind of pruning out the people that maybe we've kept in our lives too long. Maybe they're a little toxic. We really focus on those positive relationships as we get older. 8 and 10 in the study said they can talk to a friend about their mental and emotional health. That's great, because, again, there's been such taboo around mental health. But I think, now we're in an era where we are sharing more. We're seeking out some of those solutions, which is so important to just talk, just bring the awareness to it. And then 7 and 10 can talk to a friend about any of their other health issues. And I know this to be true. My BFF, Molly, just give her a little shout out if she's listening to this podcast. We were laughing the other day because we said, gosh, in our 20s, it was all about, the guys that we were kind of interested in and chasing. And in our 30s and 40s, it was about our career. And now, like in our 50s and beyond, it's become about health. What's hurting today? What medication are you taking? All these kinds of things. So I guess that's just the way of life. But anyway, so having somebody you can talk to about that health so you don't keep it inside, you learn from other people that can give you some insights or give you a connection or a resource or something is really great. So, with all of that, we're ending with friendship helping health. And that's why I wanted to bring on to this episode in August for National Friendship Day and National Wellness Month, Savenia Lindquist and Christine Gordon of HomeShare, which is a really interesting service that you can tap into for your older loved one or even for yourself. They're going to tell us all about it. But I kind of call it, for those of you who remember that 70s TV show with the four women who all lived under one roof, and they were all older, and it was hilarious. It's called The Golden Girls, if you don't remember it. I kind of see this as the Golden Girls 2.0. So here are Savenia and Christine to tell us more about HomeShare. I am so thrilled to have our guest on this episode. It's Savina Falquist of HomeShare, and unfortunately, her colleague Christina um, Gordon was unable to join us. But Savina is going to tell us all about what HomeShare is and all of the great things that you're doing. So, welcome to Caregiving Club on Air, Savina.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, it's so great to have you. And as I mentioned earlier, we always ask our guests the first question is, where are we talking to you from today?
Yeah, so we are located in Portland, Oregon.
Okay, great. And I know you're going to share with us all the wonderful things that HomeShare does, but can you just give us a little background on what is HomeShare and who is it really for and how does it work?
Okay, so HomeShare Oregon was established in 2021, and it was envisioned by a man named Homer Williams, who is a very, very prominent person in Portland. He built the Pearl District and was a developer for years and is a true philanthropist and humanitarian. And he's the co-president of our board. So that he saw that there was this huge crisis coming around aging folks, especially women, and housing and other just basic needs as people aged into going on to Social Security without any other kind of funds to help support them. And so back in 2017, he started just talking to people about this. So 21, we started, COVID landed or was in place. And so it took a bit of time to really kind of do the work. But what we do is we have a couple of priorities that we've established just because the need is so high. We have a matching platform. It's a website that you put profiles up. So if you own a home and you have rooms that you want to rent or a room, then you build your profile and you put your pictures up and everything, kind of like a dating site. And then if you're looking to rent a room, then you put your profile up, and then we have matching algorithms in the website that will help kind of bring the most compatible people up to the top of the list. And then from there, people start conversating and starting to see, well, is this going to be a compatible housemate? And they just start talking. If they decide that that's going to be a good fit, then there's free background checks available through our program, and also a rent agreement, a HomeShare agreement that is 22 pages long, but it's designed to take you through a lot of those things that you need to have an agreement on before you would share space. And then we have conflict resolution if there's things that pop up to support them sustaining that housemate situation. And Our rents, typically, we're trying to get on top of it because people are going higher and higher in their room rents, but we try to keep it around 750 or lower. And then there's also in the profile, if you say you have a room to rent and you need some tasks around the house or just some support, then you can get a reduced rent negotiated with that homeowner to be able to provide some support in the house. We don't really do a lot of that coordination. We're really focused on keeping the housemate situation autonomous, but provide support when needed. And so that's when we step in, and we get thousands of calls every year of support. So um,
Sure.
yeah,
Once you make the match, or the match is made, and the person is moving in with their new roommate who owns the home, um, do you do anything beyond that? Like, do you get involved in the actual rental payments or any of that, or is that all part of now between the two people?
it's between the two people. At
Okay.
this point, we don't. Um, we're working on different programs to be able to support individuals to access maybe some resources that would be available. So if you're on Medicaid and you're open enrolled, then you could qualify for 6 months of rent assistance at this point. So we support that by providing the information, getting connected with their case managers, and helping them do that. But for the most part, it's we really support the vetting process for matching, and then we provide the support for them to say, you really want to have receipts for your rent. You want to make it clear what day the rent's due, all of that stuff. But they're doing it on their own.
Well, as you said up front, I mean, this is so crucial because we know we're all living longer. And you mentioned, and we know that, women typically tend to live longer than men, 3 to 4 years, but very often we see a lot of what we call the solo agers are women, whether they're widowed or divorced or whatever. But they want to stay living in their homes, and it can be lonely. It can also be, again, an expense that, kind of tends to increase. So this is such a great service, I think, to really facilitate these matchups and then make sure that all of the questions are answered, like you said, all those things you may not be thinking about. Now, is it kind of age restricted in terms of home share? Do you have to be a certain age to be the rentor or rentee?
Right now, we are, it's 18 and older. We do have quite a few students, college students, who are living in cars and couch surfing and homeless. 25%, I think, is kind of the estimate. So 18 and older, we don't really have in place right now a family program with children. And that, I mean, there's people out there who've matched with people who have children, homeowners and renters, but we don't have, we haven't built in the programmatic needs for that. We're really working on the aging population right now because of the demand for this and the crisis that's happening with aging individuals. It is it's considered a health epidemic. Is the social isolation within our aging communities. So this program is, the whole organization is designed to bring people together. I will say, within the new landscape that we're entering into with the federal cuts and everything else, I feel like our programs are going to be at warp speed.
Right.
um, we're going to have to do community supporting community to keep people housed and to keep people fed, and so we are in full speed of building our networking, our outreach, our getting. We are 8 to 1 renters. So the demand for rooms is extremely high, and we are doing a lot of outreach work for homeowners who want to rent the rooms out. And we're going to have to, at this point, figure out how we reduce monthly costs for people to sustain housing, whether it's
Yeah,
renting or owning.
absolutely. And as you said, it's kind of nice too. We know that there's a lot of studies that have been done on intergenerational social wellness. So for instance, you could be older, but you have a student who's staying with you, and that kind of sparks new conversations, a new outlook on things, which can be really helpful. And then also the peer to peer is also really nice. I kind of teased up front that the concept of what you're doing reminds me of the Golden Girls from that
Yes,
70s TV show years ago that we all loved, with the four older women all living together. And
we
the one
hear it
girl.
all the time. We hear
Yeah,
it
I'm
all the
sure.
time. And if you can, we need to develop training. I've only been here a year, so I'm still grinding away at the things that need to be done. But we need home share training, and with the Golden Girls model, which a lot of older women are talking about. Um, it's just skills development of how you share space and how consideration and all of that, and hopefully humor, because that was part of the Golden Girls, right? It was very, very humorous and very
Yeah.
different characters that all came together to make that work. And I think that's kind of what people are looking for right now, especially aging women. Um, and it's interesting. I've been talking to a couple food banks around the state, and they are seeing more and more women coming to get food from their pantries and banks who are living in vans or their cars. And so, but they also, especially in the rural areas, they have a community. They've created a community of women who are kind of doing that together. So, um, whatever people prefer, but it would be nice to have the option to be in a house.
Yeah, certainly. Well,
Yeah.
and as I said, there are a lot of women who have the rooms, and they're lonely, or they feel like they're not really connected to the world. So being able to do this. I would also think that, I don't know if you have any stories to share, but a lot of our listeners are family caregivers, and many, of course, are long distance from their loved one. They can't be there on a daily basis to help with that kind of social aspect of health. And they might look at this and think this could be really great, for my mom to have somebody that would be there, and I would feel better because maybe her safety, there'd be somebody in case something happened. Do you have
Hmm.
stories like that you hear?
We we have a lot of different stories. I would say that it having a support system, whether it's distance or close, is a really nice option. It's not there for everyone, but we have multiple stories. We're working on a documentary right now with it's called Empowered, and one of our one of our stories is going to be in this documentary, and it's a woman, two women. One has children, and the other one, who rents the room, does not. And there was just a lot of really adverse situations happening for the woman who was looking for a room to rent, and they actually were not compatible, very compatible on the website, but they somehow connected, and it's been 3 years that they've been sharing a home, and it's been such a beautiful experience, just for both of them to have the support for each other and for the kids in the house, but also to be able to have somebody who was really at risk of being houseless,
Right.
feel safe and secure and not have that burden over her head all of the time.
Yeah.
Um, and that's just, that's one story. We have stuff on YouTube and all kinds of things of people sharing their stories where they came together and they share meals and they go for walks, and One thing that Homer and I kind of canned the other day was we really want people to age in place with purpose. We really, and that purpose is so important. And what you were just talking about, whether it's at a small little level of one-on-one purpose, but it's just like with, pets. You have a purpose. They get you up when you don't want to get up.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I know that well.
yeah, they make it happen. And so that's kind of, as we're evolving and trying to meet this landscape where it's at, we're really honing in on the things and the priorities. We've had stories where there was a younger person, student, staying in, renting a room, and helped out with some of the yard work and helped out with taking the trash out and some of those things. So it can be such a broad spectrum of lifestyles and needs and compatibility. It's just a matter of this cultural shift.
Right.
For years, I mean, it's our history. There was boarding houses everywhere, and
Yeah.
other cultures. It's very intergenerational. It's very family, extended family focused, and for our cultural shift to go back, we're not going to build enough houses. The affordability isn't there with the building. Shelters are not designed for long term, and your low barrier shelters are scary
Yeah.
for people. And so this is just another option that we're really trying to shift people's lens on this and consider doing that, but using the right vetting, the right tools. A lot of the really bad stories are what people who are not transparent in their profile,
Right.
and smoking is a deal breaker.
Right.
So, it's we really are out there working with individuals saying, this is not going to work. You're going to end up moving. It's going to be a bad situation. You need to be very clear and transparent. And there's people out there who are where you're at. So we just got to
Yeah.
figure out the right fit. And the other one is just not doing any background checks or references. And then, because people are trusting, and they, oh, I got a good vibe or whatever. Well, you don't really know someone
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
think I
that's
think
our
that's
goal.
the big one. Yeah, I think for at least for me personally, I know the safety one is big, and even when it comes to bringing in maybe like a home, yeah, a personal care worker or somebody into the home to help out with homemaking and meals and stuff. The amount of people who just find these folks off of like a Craigslist type thing and don't do a background check. I'm like, oh, you got to be careful. I mean, you think about that. So it is really such a valuable service. Now, because you provide all of this kind of guidance and documentation and facilitate all of that, what is the cost to both the renter and the person who's renting out? How does that work?
We don't charge anything. All of our stuff is free. We operate off of donations, grants. That's a big part of my job. Is pushing that pencil, or so to say, uh, writing lots of grants and really looking for the funding to support the services so that we can offer this for free. Most of our folks are living on fixed income. We have 70% women that use our service, and most of them are over 55 years old. And so I started an initiative in May called WISH, and it's the Women's Initiative for Stable Housing.
Mhm.
And it's a multi-purpose initiative, but one is that I discovered that in the eviction courts locally, they weren't counting gender as far as what the percentage of filed evictions were. And I'm hearing that in Clark County it's 74%. And so part of the initiative is to raise the level of consciousness and awareness around what is the percentage of women in this crisis.
Right.
And then the other part is just to work to find homeowners and renters who are kind of in that Golden Girls mentality, and create safe spaces for for aging women, to feel like they have security in their home, and
Yep.
that they my biggest worry, I have 25 years of violence prevention background. uh, I don't want these folks going out onto the streets or into shelters. I just can't even imagine it. So um, that's why we exist. That's why I was moved from child protection and all of that to aging, because I knew that when the moratoriums lifted, and the landlords and their attorneys were so burdened with all of that, 2 years of no rent and nothing to do with, you couldn't do anything with their properties, uh, in Washington anyway, which is where I worked. They came back, with, they either could own or occupy the house, and that's how they could get someone out of their place, or they raised the rent. And we saw rents doubling, and people on fixed income like had been there 20 years and didn't even make enough money to pay the rent. So it's a crisis, and I think home sharing is a really good community-based, community supporting community model that that allows us to use empty space, reduce the social isolation, reduce those monthly costs, and make it sustainable for people to age in place with purpose and like
Yeah.
share things.
Well, I would think too that, and it's so admirable that there isn't a cost to the renters or the rentees for you doing all of this. And I think, beyond the financial aspect of it, which is, crucial, there's also, again, if we're helping people with their health because of their social connections now and having a roommate or whatever, then that's lowering the costs overall for the healthcare system on treating people who have loneliness and other health issues related to that. So kudos to you and the organization. Is this just based now? You said to us that you were talking to us from, was it Portland, did you say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Portland.
So is it just for the Portland area, or are you matching people in a wider area than that?
So the the website is available throughout the United States, and there is a cost. I want to clarify that. Thank you. There is a small cost for people outside of Oregon who
Okay.
are using the matching site. Some organizations are looking at it, and there's some other stuff. Where we're at now is we are building a scalable model in Oregon. So we serve all of Oregon, and our support services are all for Oregon. We're building that model so that it can be duplicated and scalable out to other states. I believe that faster than we anticipated, we are going to be moving to a HomeShare America association where we will have membership that is, kind of best practice, the standardized trainings, the resources that are available, and creating that national umbrella so that we're all adhering to the same standards. Data collection is huge for me. I've dreamt of this for decades, is starting out with a standardized data collection so that we're getting the information and telling the stories that are actually happening. And our landscape is shifting so fast.
Yeah,
It's hard to keep up.
I
And so,
know. Mhm.
that's really important to me as far as serving our communities of people. So um, I believe that I can't give you a time, but I was projecting 4 or 5 years. I think it's probably 1 to 2 years that we're going to have
Well,
to do that.
and I was going to say, there's the pro and the con on AI, but this is maybe one of those areas where AI can be really beneficial in terms of, aggregating that data and analyzing it and getting to the pain points and all the things that really need to be done. Well, it's just a fascinating model. I'm so glad to talk to you because again, I've known about you guys for a while and I feel like it's a very interesting solution that a lot of our listeners should be aware of, and hopefully they can help to support your efforts, particularly in Portland, but as you also are growing across the United States. So, where would our listeners go to find out more information?
Our website is homeshareoregon.org.
Okay,
And that's, there's all kinds of different ways that you can support it. One of the big things, well, we always need funding. That's just a given because they're free. But the other thing is that if you're considering wanting to open up your home and rent a room out, and you're in the Oregon area or beyond, I will connect you to other places within the United States right now. Like I said, we have 8 renters to 1 homeowner, so the demand is so high. And it doesn't have to be a commitment; it's a conversation, and it's just to start the conversation. And then I'll just give you my direct phone number here in case people want it.
sure.
Um, it's 503-567-2733.
Great. And we're going to put that up on our episode guide page on our
Oh,
website, as well as the links to everything that you gave
wonderful.
us. But Savina, thank you so much for sharing what you're doing and all the great work. And again, it's so nice to see some of these organizations really focus on the fact that we are living longer, but sometimes we're living lonelier longer. And there are ways that we can solve that and solve some of the homeless situation and other things as well. So, you
Yes,
know,
thank you, Sherri. I
yeah, thank
appreciate
you.
this.
I appreciate having you on. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
So wasn't that really interesting to learn more about HomeShare? There are so many great resources out there and services that are now available for us as family caregivers to help our older loved ones or even ourselves as we're planning ahead for our futures. And HomeShare is one of those, I think, really interesting solutions that we have now that we haven't necessarily had in the past, just on a TV show, and that was about it. Anyway, so let's dive into our well home design news now. Since August is National Wellness Month, I wanted to share with you some information about Blue Wellness, which is everything to do with water and coastal living. And we are having National Beach Day on August 30th. So I thought it was a good time to share some of the information from my Me Time Monday book. So, one of the things that I found, the research in my book, is that 8 in 10 people in the world live 60 miles or closer to a body of water. So that's an ocean, a sea, a lake, or a river. And, water is really rejuvenating throughout history. It has been a way of healing. It certainly helps us with emotional stress as well as physical healing. And one study that I wanted to share with you recently analyzed the health status of 48 million people. That's huge. Most studies have like 1,000 people in them. This was 48 million people. And these are people mostly living in England. And they found that those who lived closer to the coast reported good health regardless of age, gender, race, socioeconomic status, or even if they lived near parks or other green spaces. The coastal living was actually self-reported health was better. And so, water is really a tonic for the body and the brain. And it is, associated with our memories of floating in our mother's womb, but also it triggers the brain to feel calm and soothed because water means survival. We know that we need water to survive. So, the research has shown that living by the sea enhances your sleep because negative ions in sea air accelerates your ability to absorb oxygen. So that salt air, if you can, breathe that in during the day or even in the evening if you have your windows open, it has found that on average, people can sleep up to 47 minutes longer and get into that deep restorative sleep that we know is so important for our health. It also, living in coastal living environments boosts your serotonin levels, which is one of your 4 happiness hormones I write about in my book that actually emanates from your microbiome and in your gut. And this helps boost our mood. So, coastal living. What can I say? I know it's more expensive. I feel very blessed and grateful every day that I get to live near the coast. But even if you don't live near the coast, take some trips. Find your water that you love, and make sure that that's part of your wellness routine. And I tease you up front with, what does Parkinson's, golf courses, and dogs have to do with each other? Well, interestingly enough, there's been two recent studies that have come out about Parkinson's I wanted to share with you, because they kind of have to do mostly with where we live and how important our environmental wellness is on our well-being and our health, which is one of my 7 elements for my Me Time Monday book. So, this study that just recently came out has found that if you are living near a golf course, you may increase your Parkinson's risk later in life. And so, the people living in a public water district with one or more golf courses had almost double the odds of developing Parkinson's compared to those without a golf course near them. And this was in within probably like I think it said a 1 to 3 mile radius, and about 50% higher odds than those using private wells. Now, when a course was on land more vulnerable to pesticide contamination into the community water source, and sometimes the golf courses will use certain pesticides to keep the greens beautiful and pests out, and all that kind of stuff. But this can also maybe increase the risk of Parkinson's, because they found in the research study that when those golf courses use those pesticides, then the Parkinson's prevalence within that local community increased 82% higher than just the general population or people who didn't live near a golf course. Now, of course, researchers are always very cautious to say, okay, we've proven it, cause and effect. So, of course, I want to do a caveat on this, and this is not to panic anyone who lives near a beautiful golf course or on a golf course, but it is something to think about. And there will be more research, I'm sure, that will delve into this to see if there is a causal effect. But I think it's also just a great reminder, our environment definitely impacts our health. We've seen that with Alzheimer's disease, living in neighborhoods that have higher crime rates, living in neighborhoods that have food deserts, living in neighborhoods higher to highways or closer to highways, or who have higher levels of pollution. All of that increases risk for Alzheimer's disease, which of course is a brain disease, as is Parkinson's. It's the brain is being affected, and that's manifesting itself in dysfunctioning certain parts of our body and our brains. So I thought it was worthwhile to bring that to your attention, and then kind of shifting gears. Some good news is we know that dogs help our health in general. We know that it can lower our blood pressure. They get us outside and moving because they have to be walked. They certainly provide a lot of emotional support. Dogs are now part of our family. I know I feel that my dog is part of my family, and we're gonna get her, my little Penny, on video here in a minute, just to say hi for National Dog Day. But one of the things that was really interesting is there was another study that was done. This one was done in England. And what it found is that, and I'm just going to read this to you so I get it accurately reported. So they trained two dogs to distinguish between swabs in the nose, a sebum, oily substance produced by the skin, from individuals with and without Parkinson's disease. So this was a double-blind trial, which is, pretty rigorous research. When we take a look at research, double-blind trials are kind of the top of the chart there. And the dogs demonstrated up to 80% sensitivity, meaning they identified people who had the condition, and up to 98% specificity, which is how well the dogs identified people who do not have the condition. So these dogs were trained on these scents. We know that dogs have, I don't know, it's like 100 million things they can smell. We can only smell, I think it's like 1 million or 10 million at the most. So you can see how more sensitive our dogs' noses are. And so they trained them, and they were able to distinguish who had Parkinson's and who didn't. And then even more remarkable, the dogs were able to identify other unrelated conditions. Now we know this from other studies. We have studies that show that dogs can smell certain cancers, that dogs can understand when a seizure is coming on with someone who has epilepsy or somebody who might have diabetes and hasn't been diagnosed yet. So I gotta say, we say that dogs are man's best friend. Well, I'm telling you, they're now our healers. They're helping us stay healthy. They are helping us identify, our health issues. So I'm a dog lover. I have to admit, and and I just love these studies that show that dogs really, really are, our companions for life. Now, there's something else I wanted to share with you. There's a startup that is starting to develop drugs to delay canine aging. Because if we're living longer because of our dogs, why shouldn't we help our dogs live longer, right? So, this particular San Francisco startup is looking at metabolic and hormonal imbalances before they become diseases in our dogs. And they are starting their first longevity pills, are going to be available next year, and it will extend your dog's life. So we'll see how that goes. I'm sure we'll see a lot more information, but I just want to share that with you. And then, of course, as I've shared with you before, getting outside, walking our pets, it not only gets us outside, it's just a great inducement to get outside into nature, take some steps and some walk. But studies show dementia affects between 14 to 35% of older dogs, and then, of course, we know walking helps lower our dementia risk. And so the Dog Aging Project found that dementia is more than 6 times higher in inactive dogs. So do some good for yourself, do some good for your dog if you're a dog owner, and pay attention to our pets. And with that, I'm going to try to delicately. Sorry, I'm off camera now a little bit, but I'm going to share with you my favorite little person. She's a person. Let's just call her a person. She thinks she's a person. Can you hear that? She's very shy right now. Oh, Penny, come on. Don't you want to say hi to everybody? Usually she's totally wanting to get up here and talk to you guys. I'm going to see if I can get her turned around so you can see her. Say hi. Okay, so that's Penny's debut for National Dog Day on August 26th, where we celebrate our dogs. And I just thank you for listening to this episode. And shout out to all you caregivers and all you dog lovers out there. Thank you for joining us on this episode. A reminder, you can find more information in my book, Me Time Monday, The Weekly Wellness Plan to Find Balance and Joy for a Busy Life, or visit MeTimeMonday.com or CaregivingClub.com. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Caregiving Club on Air. Please hit the subscribe button to listen to us on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, SiriusXM, iHeartRadio, Pandora, as well as other listening channels. Check out all the resources and article links on our episode guide page at caregivingclub.com. Just hit the podcast tab at the top and email us with comments and questions at podcast@caregivingclub.com. Thank you again for listening, and take care and stay well.